Must have thought I was bluffing, Mr. Bond.
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 movie villains inspired by actual people.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
For this list, we'll be looking at famous antagonists throughout movie history whose creations were directly inspired by a real person. Warning, spoilers to follow. Which of these villains is your favourite? Could you imagine meeting a real version of them? Let us know in the comments below. Number 20. Keyser Söze, The Usual Suspects. Most of this noir mystery is concerned with the identity of Turkish crime lord Keyser Söze. In one of cinema's greatest and most famous twist endings, the elusive Söze is revealed to be Kevin Spacey's verbal kint. The character of Söze is a creation of writer Christopher McQuarrie, who took inspiration from the story of John List. List ended the lives of his mother, wife, and children, and subsequently disappeared. No one knew who or where he was.
John Emil List would elude authorities for 18 frustrating years, despite efforts by investigators to keep the murder case alive through the media.
In fact, he assumed a new identity in Denver, Colorado as Bob Clark and began working at a paperbox company. He stayed there from 1979 to 1986, and he was finally apprehended in '89. He was subsequently sentenced to life in prison. Number 19. Moe Greene, The Godfather. A Corleone associate in Las Vegas, Moe Greene is a minor but important character within The Godfather.
Good to see you, Mike.
How are you, Mo?
All right, you got everything you want?
He's the one who helped establish organised crime in Vegas, and eventually takes on Fredo during the war. But Michael wants his casino, so he has Greene shot while he's getting a massage. Greene's character is largely modelled after mobster Bugsy Siegel. Like Greene, Siegel was a Jewish mobster with connections to the Italian-American mafia. He also moved from New York to Nevada and was paramount in the creation of Las Vegas. He opened casinos and helped introduce both gambling and organised crime to the city. And like Greene, Siegel was eventually killed in a hit.
I figured I wouldn't marry him.
He was not getting a massage. Number 18. Imhotep, The Mummy. Believe it or not, Imhotep was actually a real person. Well, he wasn't buried alive, and he certainly didn't come back to life, grow a new body, and kill people. But, you know, aside from all of that, he was real. Imhotep was alive during the 27th century BC, and as a result, not much is known about his life. In fact, much of his supposed history was written long after his death. What we do know is that he served as Chancellor under the Pharaoh Djoser, and that he is the likely architect of the Pyramid of Djoser.
This is the step pyramid tomb of Pharaoh Djoser, a king of Egypt's 3rd dynasty. It's a revolutionary masterpiece designed by Egypt's pioneer architect, Imhotep.
Imhotep became revered as a god of medicine long after his passing, and the location of his tomb remains unknown. Number 17. Le Chiffre, Casino Royale. A new style of Bond needed a new style of villain, and Le Chiffre was the answer.
Welcome, Mr. Beach. Or is that Bond? I'm a little confused.
Well, we wouldn't want that, would we?
With his signature cloudy eye and scar, Le Chiffre isn't a mastermind intent of ruling the world. He's just a naive banker who funds terrorism and stages a poker game. Author Ian Fleming reportedly based Le Chiffre on famous occultist Aleister Crowley, or at least his physical description. Unlike the conventionally attractive Mads Mikkelsen, Le Chiffre appears much like, well, like Aleister Crowley in Fleming's novel. He is described as being very thick, with a lumbering style of movement. This was mirrored in the 1967 spoof version of Casino Royale, where Le Chiffre is played by a large Orson Welles.
You amuse me, Mr. Bond.
I'm glad you're enjoying me.
Shall we, double the bank?
Number 16. Cruella de Vil, 101 Dalmatians. One of the most famous Disney villains, Cruella de Vil is highly notable for both her appearance and her motivations.
Cruella, isn't that a new fur coat? My only true love, darling. I live for furs. I worship furs. After all, is there a woman in all this wretched world who doesn't?
Her skunk hair and massive fur coats are iconic, and her desire to skin puppies is easily one of the most depraved in the Disney canon. While she's technically a creation of author Dodie Smith, Disney did a lot of work in making her their own. Her tall and lanky frame was modelled after actress Mary Wickes, and her mannerisms after stage actress Tallulah Bankhead. Disney has called Cruella a manic takeoff on Tallulah Bankhead, and Betty Lou Gerson reportedly modelled her vocal performance after the famous stage actress.
Oh, Roger, you are a fool!
Number 15. Charles Foster Kane. Citizen Kane. Some may call Charles Foster Kane a villain protagonist, as the movie explores his unlikable personality, his tragic downfall, and the events that led to his lonely death. Most historians agree that Kane was modelled after newspaper tycoon William Randolph Hearst. Some of the movie's plot points mirror Hearst's life, like when he tried getting his mistress, Marion Davies, into dramatic films.
For I didn't want it, I didn't want to sing. It was his idea. Everything was his idea.
The movie also used Hearst's private ranch as a filming location for Kane's estate. Finally, Hearst's famous quote, "You furnish the pictures and I'll furnish the war," was turned into
You provide the prose poems, I'll provide the war.
for the movie. We don't know if he had a sled. Number 14. Lord Farquaad. Shrek. This little man with big ambitions, Lord Farquaad of Duloc wishes to marry Princess Fiona so he can become king.
Technically, you're not a king.
Thelonious. You were saying?
What I mean is, you're not a king yet. but you can become one. All you have to do is marry a princess.
Farquaad's physical design is arguably his most famous aspect. He's very short, he has a massive square chin, and he has a ridiculous shoulder-length bob that makes him look like Uma Thurman from Pulp Fiction. While nothing is 100% confirmed, it's widely assumed that Farquaad was physically modelled after Disney CEO Michael Eisner.
You're a monster! I'm not the monster here, you are! You and the rest of that fairy tale trash poisoning my perfect world.
Shrek producer Jeffrey Katzenberg reportedly didn't gel with Eisner, and he had Farquaad modelled after his former boss as a mean-spirited joke. Number 13. Jabba the Hutt. Star Wars Episode 6 Return of the Jedi. Now, if you want mean-spirited jokes, let's talk about Jabba the Hutt. As everyone knows, Jabba is the massive and horrifically ugly slug creature who originally appears in the first act of Return of the Jedi. George Lucas reportedly told his design team to make Jabba the Hutt look like Sidney Greenstreet, a popular 40s actor known for movies like Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon.
Well, have a drink with me. I have a drink in the morning, and every time you send my shipment over, it's always just a little bit short.
They in turn took Greenstreet as inspiration and did a little fantasy fine-tuning, resulting in the grotesque Jabba we all know and love. Funnily enough, Jabba was originally supposed to wear a fez, much like Greenstreet's character in Casablanca. Number 12. Miranda Priestly. The Devil Wears Prada. It has long been believed that the cold and demanding Miranda Priestly is based on Vogue's editor-in-chief, Anna Wintour.
And you have no style or sense of fashion?
Well, I think that depends on what you're...
No. That wasn't a question.
It's important to note that the book's author, Lauren Weisberger, has long denied that she based Priestly on Wintour. However, the comparisons are just too obvious to ignore, and people have strong reason to believe that Weisberger was writing about Wintour.
And it's sort of comical how you think that you've made a choice that exempts you from the fashion industry when in fact you're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
Weisberger had once worked as a personal assistant to Wintour, and many critics believe that the events of her novel were modelled after her time at Vogue. Intentional or not, Miranda Priestly has strong roots in reality. Number 11, Mickey and Mallory Knox, Natural Born Killers. Arguably one of the most controversial films of the 90s, Natural Born Killers stars Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis as a roaming serial killer couple, Mickey and Mallory, who become media sensations. They were modelled after spree killer Charles Starkweather and his girlfriend Carol Ann Fugate.
I just wanted to tell you I love you and I'll miss you. Don't forget about me. You won't forget about me. I won't forget about you.
There are a few key differences, like Fugate being just 14 in real life. But many other things line up. Just like Mickey, Starkweather killed Fugate's stepfather and mother before taking her on a killing spree through the country.
I think we should get a whole bunch of stuff because I need a whole new wardrobe. Because I'm a new woman now. I'm a new woman!
And just like in the movie, their crime spree became a media sensation. And while Mickey and Mallory earned their freedom, Starkweather was eventually executed, and Fugate spent 17 years in prison. Number 10, Dr. Evil, the Austin Powers franchise.
Ow! You shot me, you a-hole!
Possibly everybody's favourite character, let alone villain, from the Austin Powers series, Dr. Evil is well known for being a spoof of typical James Bond villains, especially Ernst Stavro Blofeld.
Blow them up as soon as they have captured the Americans. Here's the key.
However, Dr. Evil is also reportedly based on a real person, and that person is Saturday Night Live producer Lorne Michaels, who just so happened to be one of Mike Myers' bosses from his time on the show.
I think people have to know who's in charge and everyone has to have a direct route to you. Pretty much I talk to everyone, and then I listen, I absorb it, but at some point you make a decision and then you move on.
Myers is said to have based Evil's facial and vocal mannerisms on Michael's, and even the baddie's catchphrase,
"Throw me a frickin' bone here,"
is borrowed from him, a takeoff of something he regularly spouted during SNL meetings.
How about no, you crazy Dutch bastard?
Number 9, Severus Snape, the Harry Potter franchise.
There will be no foolish wand-waving or silly incantations in this class.
No, there wasn't really a dark magical wizard like this, so you can put your minds at ease.
I can teach you how to bewitch the mind and ensnare the senses.
In reality, author J.K. Rowling allegedly based Snape, the greasy-haired, ambiguous tormentor of Harry and his friends, on her old chemistry teacher, John Nettleship.
It may have escaped your notice, but life isn't fair. Your blessed father knew that. In fact, he frequently sought it.
My father was a great man.
Your father was a swine.
Nettleship was the head of science at Wydene School in Gloucestershire, which also happened to be where Rowling's mother briefly worked. The schoolteacher would later describe himself as short-tempered and with a dark, foreboding laboratory.
You're just like your father. Lazy, arrogant.
Don't say a word against my father.
Weak.
I'm not weak.
Then prove it. Control your emotions.
While we're hoping he didn't directly hit his students over the head with a book, Nettleship's strictness had surely become legendary by his retirement in 1997.
You don't want me as your enemy, Quirrell.
Number 8, Ursula, the Little Mermaid.
Come in, my child. We mustn't lurk in doorways. It's rude.
Ursula is technically based on the sea witch character from the Hans Christian Andersen story, The Little Mermaid, which you know this movie is adapted from. But Disney actually dramatically expanded her role and provided her with an original character design for the animated musical fantasy.
Flotsam, Jetsam! I want you to keep an extra close watch on this pretty little daughter of his. She may be the key to Triton's undoing.
This design, including her wild hair, extravagant makeup, and large figure, was actually modelled after the famous drag queen Divine. Of course, he didn't have tentacles, since he wasn't an ocean-dwelling invertebrate. Divine was born Harris Milstead, but he often took on his divine persona for his music and film career.
No woman's worth crawling on the earth, so walk like a man, my son.
Unfortunately, he passed away only 1 year before The Little Mermaid's release.
The only way to get what you want is to become a human yourself.
Number 7, Annie Wilkes, Misery.
My name is Annie Wilkes.
I'm number one fan.
Yes, that's right. I'm also a nurse.
Annie Wilkes is one of the most popular figures in horror, known for her seemingly sweet yet actually malicious personality and the atrocious acts she commits towards Paul Sheldon, an author she holds captive after rescuing him during a blizzard.
Do you know what they did to the native workers who stole diamonds? Don't worry, they didn't kill them. That would be like junking a Mercedes just because it had a broken spring. No, if they caught them, they had to make sure they could go on working, but they also had to make sure they could never run away. The operation was called hobbling.
These acts include tying him to a bed and brutally breaking his ankles with a sledgehammer.
Shh, darling. Trust me.
God's sake.
It's for the best.
In the DVD commentary, director Rob Reiner stated that a pediatric nurse named Janine Jones, who would induce paralysis in her patients before attempting to revive them in order to receive praise for her efforts, loosely influenced the murderous tendencies of Wilkes' character.
You dirty bird. How could you?
Jones's deadly crimes landed her a 99-year prison sentence.
God, I love you.
Number 6. Hannibal Lecter, The Silence of the Lambs.
You will let me know when those lambs stop screaming, won't you?
This movie gave us one of cinema's most renowned villains in Hannibal Lecter, the unnervingly intelligent cannibal that helps Clarice Starling in her search for a serial killer.
Jack Crawford sent a trainee to me.
Yes, I'm a student. I'm here to learn from you. Maybe you can decide for yourself whether or not I'm qualified enough to do that.
He is a character adapted from Thomas Harris's 2 suspense novels from the 80s, but it wasn't until the 21st century that Harris revealed Lecter's inspiration to be a man he called Dr. Salazar.
If you didn't kill him, then who did, sir?
Who can say? Best thing for him, really. His therapy was going nowhere.
While working as a reporter, Harris spoke to this eloquent doctor in prison in a similar interaction to Starling and Lecter's discussions.
What does he do, this man you seek?
He kills women.
No, that is incidental. What is the first and principal thing he does? What needs does he serve by killing?
Though Harris never revealed the inmate's real name, Dr. Salazar's story and the information given by Harris seemed to point to a real-life Mexican doctor named Alfredo Valle Trevino, who served a sentence at the same prison for chopping up his lover.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Number 5. Auric Goldfinger. Goldfinger.
This is gold, Mr. Bond. All my life I've been in love with its color.
While the titular villain may have been overshadowed by his henchmen in the film, he still poses as a menacing threat to James Bond, as he attempts to radioactively contaminate the gold in Fort Knox.
His government's given you a bomb. I prefer to call it an atomic device. It's small, but particularly dirty. Cobalt and iodine? Precisely.
American media at the time claimed that Goldfinger's persona was based on a gold mining magnate by the name of Charles W. Engelhard Jr.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. There is nothing you can talk to me about that I don't already know.
During the 50s, Engelhard built his company into one of the world's leaders in the refining of precious metals, with specific attention paid to gold, which he acquired from South Africa.
Forgive me, Mr. Bond, but I must arrange to separate my gold from the late Mr. Solo.
Though the history books omit a small, steel hat-wielding henchman in Engelhard's story, we can't rule him out as a likely model for the character. Number 4. Biff Tannen. Back to the Future Part 2.
Look at him. He's a butthead just like his old man was.
While he had a minor role as an intimidating jerk in the first movie, Biff's role is significantly expanded for the sequel. Now, Tannen is an extremely wealthy and powerful man.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Biff Tannen Museum, dedicated to Hill Valley's #1 citizen and America's greatest living folk hero, the one and only Biff Tannen.
In October of 2015, the same month and year that are visited in the second film, writer Bob Gale admitted Donald Trump influenced the older version of Biff, as the business mogul was a well-established American figure in the late 1980s, thanks to his significant role in the real estate market.
Poorest person in Kuwait, they live like kings.
and yet they're not paying. We make it possible for them to sell their oil. Why aren't they paying us 25% of what they're making? It's a joke.
While Gale had never admitted this fact before Trump's presidential bid in 2015, the similarities between the two are undeniable.
You walk out that door, and I won't only cut off you, I'll cut off your kids!
Number 3. Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. One of the most iconic slashers in movie history, Leatherface has been scaring people since his debut in 1974. Of course, the story of the real Leatherface goes back even further, back to 1957, Wisconsin. It was then that authorities discovered the crimes of Ed Gein, also known as the Butcher of Plainfield.
The police uncovered a gothic house of horrors.
Gein killed 2 women, and much like Leatherface, he was known to exhume corpses and make keepsakes, including masks, out of human skin. His house was also found decorated much like Leatherface's, complete with human bones and skulls. In fact, Gein has inspired a huge number of iconic villains, including Norman Bates.
We all go a little mad sometimes. Haven't you?
Suffice to say, his nightmarish story has long endured through popular culture. Number 2. Magneto, the X-Men franchise.
You see, I think what you really are afraid of is me. Me and my kind. The Brotherhood of Mutants.
Magneto is one of X-Men's primary antagonists, a man who holds the ability to manipulate magnetic fields and dons a helmet that's resistant to telepathy.
What the hell do you want with me?
You? My dear boy, whoever said I wanted you?
It sounds nerdy, but it's pretty badass when he completely uproots the Golden Gate Bridge in X-Men The Last Stand. His villainy stems from his violent and forceful attitude against mutant oppression by humans, which we can't help but admit sounds similar to Malcolm X's approach towards racism in America. In fact, comic book writer Chris Claremont confirmed the connection.
It means the same thing that Attorney General Robert Kennedy means when he says that the #1 domestic problem in America is the race problem, that it is almost impossible to solve it. It's almost impossible to give justice to Negroes.
To top things off, Magneto's first comic book appearance was in the September 1963 issue of X-Men, at the height of the Civil Rights Movement.
We will strike with a vengeance and a fury that this world has never witnessed.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
Number 1. Dracula, Various.
Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make.
Known for his penchant for violence, his blood-sucking ways, and his signature cape and fangs, Dracula has become a pop culture mainstay through the last century and beyond.
I hope you will find this comfortable.
It all started with the famous 1897 novel of the same name, in which author Bram Stoker based his iconic villain on the 15th century prince of Wallachia, later dubbed Vlad the Impaler, and also known as Vlad Dracula.
The world of the real Dracula was bloodthirsty and treacherous.
While it hasn't been proven that Vlad drank blood, he did gain a reputation for being excessively violent and cruel, mostly stemming from his practice of impaling enemies on the battlefield.
There is no doubt that the only way Vlad could get rid of the Boyar and cement himself in power was to kill them all.
As such, he's inspired numerous films throughout the years, technically starting with the unauthorized adaptation called Nosferatu in 1922, and he continues in the 21st century.
One grew into a warrior, so fierce that entire armies would retreat in terror at the mention of his name.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.